Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ealing Road podcast, where in today's show we're going to be going over the 2-0 defeat at Selhurst Park against Crystal Palace. We'll also talk a little bit about the Grimsby game and some of the changes that we saw there and some of the changes we might take forward into Newcastle. Dan, we were chatting just before we started recording to say this might be the worst episode of the season because of how poor the game was, at least from Brentford's perspective. How you doing? You all right?
I'm good, yeah. It was a bit bland, wasn't it? But I forgot about Grimsby, and that we'll be talking about that. So that cheered me up a little bit. So at least we've got something to talk about.
Exactly that. Just before we get going, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts after the Palace game, ahead of the Newcastle game on Sunday. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Dan, I thought we'd start off with tweet of the week. A little bit different this week. Obviously, we've mentioned that the game was a little bit stale on Saturday against Palace, but this tweet was from Eurofoot, and it says, Brentford are having less of the ball in games under Keith Andrews, but overall their stats remain similar to when Thomas Frank was in charge. And they basically tweeted an extract from a BBC Sport article, and it shows the kind of differences in statistics with Brentford under Thomas Frank and under Keith Andrews. So we're averaging less possession at the moment with just under 40%. The same goals, there's only a 0.1 in it in terms of goals per game. The same goals conceded, only 0.1 in it in terms of goals conceded per game. A similar amount of shots as well. We're having fewer touches in the opposition box by about 5 per 90. But the interesting thing that I want to talk about in terms of the tweet of the week is that we are averaging fewer long passes per game, and we are averaging more fast breaks per game under Keith Andrews than we did under Thomas Frank. And we have kind of spoken about potentially the style of play regressing a touch under Keith Andrews compared to kind of the football that Brentford were playing last year in terms of dominating the ball. And I think that's reflected in the stats. But is anything there surprising? Is anything there interesting for you?
It doesn't feel like we've played less long balls this season. It feels like at times we've actually probably played more in certain games. And there's a time and a place for it. You know, even with possession, I think we had one of our highest possession of the season against Palace, and it doesn't always work. I think in many ways Palace play similarly to us, and one of us almost had to have the ball on Sunday, and it was us. And they capitalised when the moments mattered. I think the fast breaks as well is obviously something that I think Keith Andrews is focused on. We've got in behind a number of times. That ball from Jordan Henderson that we've seen several times this season over the top, it's made a big difference. I think there is a real focus on us getting it into those front three as quickly as possible. I still would like us to play a little bit more through the midfield when we can. But I think broadly it is probably quite similar than under Thomas Frank. I think that possession stat under Frank probably increased quite a bit last season, whereas before it was probably close to what we are like under Andrews now. I think, like I said, there's a time and a place for different sort of styles depending on who you're up against. But in certain games, I would still like to see us take a little bit more control, move the ball better in midfield, and find ways to unlock the opposition. Because against Palace, we had a lot of possession, but never really managed to get through the door. But I think it shows that Keith Andrews is still doing a pretty good job. We've lost a lot, and he's new to the job. Yes, he's made mistakes. Again, we're going to talk about the subs in this episode, which I don't think were great. But overall, I think you've got to look at the bigger picture. I think he's learning. I think he's doing pretty well with a side who objectively probably isn't quite as strong as the one we had last year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think against Palace, one of the big kind of bugbears, at least for me, and I think for everyone watching the game, would be the lack of progression through the middle of the pitch on the floor. We'll talk about that a little bit, but I think I agree in terms of where Thomas Frank was year on year. You'd saw Brentford having more of the ball, and particularly in that last year, and even the season where we got Europe, there was a lot of kind of intricate build-up play, be that through passing networks on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, whether it was KLP and Schade, whether it was Damsgard linking play. And I think Damsgard is a real touch point in terms of this season, because I think against Liverpool he was at his best, but I don't think we've seen him at his best bar that performance. And even against Liverpool, not the levels or the way that he was controlling games in the season just gone. And I feel like he's probably the key in terms of establishing a bit more control through the middle of the pitch, in terms of creating chances through the middle of the pitch as well, instead of relying on long balls over the top. which we did against Palace on Saturday quite a bit. Initial thoughts, Dan?
I think it was always going to be a really tight game. I think when we play Palace, it typically is a really tight game. There's not a lot in it. I think we're probably two of the most similar sides in terms of style of play. You know, we're both quite effective often against some of the bigger teams because we're able to use fast breaks. We're able to get forward quickly. Clearly, they're the blueprint for a back five, and we don't play like that. We don't play it to that standard when we play a back five. But you kind of knew that it would be a low margin game. We've got to defend well, cut out their opportunities, and we've got to take our opportunities where they come. And it was just a couple of mistakes, really, and that was the difference. And it remained a bit of a bland game. We never really looked like getting back into it. I'm not overly surprised. They're a very good team. I think they're unbeaten in quite a while at home as well. So it was always going to be a tough game, but maybe if we had got ahead first, it would have been a bit different.
I think the only chance of real note that we can even talk about a little bit, I mean, we'll talk about the goals first, but I think Janelt had a chance in the second half towards the end of the game. That given his like pedigree that he's shown in terms of finishing, it was a really similar chance to the goal he scored against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. Not the chip, but the first one. It kind of pops up to him on the edge of the box and he just completely slices through it and it goes really wide. But I think, I mean, in terms of running through the game itself, Dan, it was uneventful until Mateta's opener. I don't really think Collins and Vandenberg kept a lid on Mateta. Collins in particular had a really poor game with the own goal and then the mistake that almost led to 3-0. Any complaints about Mateta's goal, or are we just tipping your hat to a really, really well taken header?
It is a really good header. He put it in the one area of the goal that would have been, very difficult for Keller to get there and save it. I think we'll be disappointed just from conceding from two set pieces in this game. They almost out Brentforded us, and we don't see that very often. Normally, it's us that are dominant in those sorts of situations. So I feel like we will be saying that, we should have got first contact or second contact at least on that. Normally that's what we see ourselves do to teams, but I guess it comes back to what I was saying in that I think Palace are, one of the more similar sides to us, and they got the edge on us there. So good finish, but I still think we will be disappointed that we weren't able to get first or second contact on that free kick, because that's normally our bread and butter, and that's normally what we're good at. We're quite good at defending set pieces. We're very good at attacking with set pieces, and normally you'd back us in a set piece battle, but we lost this set piece battle, and that ultimately cost us the game.
Especially considering how good our record was last season with Keith Andrews in charge of set pieces. I think we only conceded 3 goals, which was the fewest in the league by some margin as well. Just as a side note, and this is not a criticism at all, but as Kelleher kind of tries, there is no way that he can save that goal. It's a perfectly timed header straight into the corner of the net. But it did the figure that he cast in the net was very reminiscent of how Flecken just used to didn't dive. He kind of turns, looks at the ball, and just thinks, "Nah, fuck it, I can't get there." It was so similar to when Harry Wilson's flick landed in the back of the net against Fulham at Craven Cottage. And this is, I'm not criticizing Kelleher. He shouldn't have been able to save that, but it was just I don't know if anyone else picked up on that. Let me know in the comment section.
He's a much better shot stopper, so I think we can give him some grace. I think
exactly.
Flecken probably did that all too often, and his shot stopping wasn't as good. Normally Kelleher will make 1 or 2 good saves almost on a weekly basis, and we know he's really good at that. So I think we can trust it is probably a really good finish. The fact he wasn't able to get that one.
100%. I think if there was a moment to kind of sum up our game in general, Damsgard's free kick on half-time, just before half-time, was in a really great position. It looked like there might have been a gap in the wall for him to get through, but just balloons it over the bar. And I think for that to be the only chance in the first half we're talking about, we do need to kind of outline what the problems were. Watching from the away end, what did you think was going on in that first half? Because it looked as though Palace were comfortable throughout. And we had moments, like if we're being really generous, Ouattara, I thought had a few good moments. There was a few good kind of flicks from Thiago, and Ouattara running it is centre half down the right hand side. But what would you say were the problems in the first half?
I don't think there was really anything in it until they scored. I
Yeah,
think we had issues keeping the ball at times. I think we was a bit sloppy in possession, gave the ball away in dangerous areas. I think they pinned us back with their wing backs. Obviously, they play more of a back three, I would say, than a back five. I think um, Munoz and Mitchell get forward really, really high, and it's hard then for us to get out with the likes of Coyote. We didn't really make the most of set pieces. Coyote, I think the only long throw I can remember in the first half, it was a foul throw and it got given the other way. Dango did break through at one stage, but his effort was blocked. He wasn't
yeah,
really able to make the most of that situation. And I do just think it was always going to be a game of fairly low margin. You're going to have to take your chances. And with that free kick, I said in the Liverpool game that when we thought we had a free kick on the edge of the area, it was eventually a penalty. I don't remember us having a free kick outside the area in a shooting position so far this season. So this is my chance to see it for the first time. And yeah, it was a terrible effort, to be honest. It probably was a bit too close. I think you need a bit of distance sometimes to get it up and down if you're going over the wall, unless obviously you see a gap in the wall. I think Damsgard will be disappointed with that because I think he is capable of getting effort on target in that range. I just think we needed to keep it tight in defence, and we needed that moment to go our way. And I think they probably lost a bit of belief. Palace had something to sit on. Palace were probably quite content for it to remain a tight game with not much in it once they were 1-0 up. And we just didn't have the answers to breaking them down at all. And, it's not my favourite away end anyway. You can't see half the pitch. So that's what I saw from the bit I could see.
from a tactical perspective, and I was chatting to someone on TikTok because I made a video about kind of Damsgaard's lack of impact in the game. And we've just come off the back of the Liverpool result where Damsgaard was playing a lot higher and a lot closer to Thiago. But obviously, that's a different game where Brentford are a lot deeper, so that when we do pump it long and Thiago wins the flick, Damsgaard can make things happen. But I just felt that Yarmo and Hendo were just so close to each other at basically all times during that first half. And because Damsgaard was so much further up and he's not coming deep anymore to receive the ball as much as he would have done under Frank last season. I remember picking a goal out, the assist or the pre-assist for Schade against Leicester, where he comes really deep, almost to the halfway line. And obviously it's a different game. We had Leicester pinned back and they're a much inferior opposition than Palace at the weekend. But he comes deep, picks up the ball, threads the pass through to Schade. We're not seeing him do that at all, really, this season. He's either really high to Thiago, and because that gap between Jordan Henderson and Yarmolenko in midfield is so big between those two and Damsgard at the tip of the triangle, it just feels like when he does get on the ball, and because it's not as often as he was getting on the ball in the season just gone, he's more prone to giving it away. And I did notice the amount that he gave it away on Saturday against Palace. I mean, how do we get Damsgaard more involved in the game? Because I feel like we've not spoken too much about his not that he's been poor, because I don't think he's been poor, but he's definitely having less of an effect on games than he was last season.
He's our best creator, and he always tries to make something happen, even if he does give the ball away. He's always trying to thread through that pass. He's not often taking the easy option. So I think we need to give him some of that freedom and freedom to roam as well. If he's not finding himself on the ball much, or we're struggling to really progress the ball up the field, I think he should be given the freedom to roam a little bit, find the space so we can play it into him, because he is the one that is most likely to receive the ball and play a positive pass that will set us on the attack. And we need to get him in those positions more often than not. It has been a bit of a mixed season, but you always see him trying, even when he's not playing that amazingly. This is why I didn't agree with him coming off in the second half. I still think our best bet of trying to create something is getting him on the ball, and he will keep trying. And sooner or later, one of those passes will come off. And, he's one that does seem to get taken off quite a bit. And I don't really agree with that when we're chasing the game. I think he is far more likely than Janelt to, I think that's who he came off for, to make something happen or help the team. And I think that's the frustration. He's he's actually done really well for Denmark this season,
Yeah.
I think, as well. And I don't think that's something that we've seen that Danish fans have seen much from him in the last few years. I think he's really started to step up for them now. So it's still there. I think he's still probably definitely in our top 2 or 3 best players. And we just need to get him involved a bit more.
Let us know in the comment section what Keith can do to kind of solve the issues we've got in terms of creativity through the middle of the pitch. Because I think it's a really interesting topic that we haven't spoken about too much on the pod. But if it continues in terms of Brentford struggling to break down teams, which we did, especially teams in and around us last season, rather than teams above us, where we seem a little bit better equipped to kind of create stuff via the long ball. But let us know in the comment section what you think of Damsgard. We'll touch on the subs because I think that is the main talking point from the game. But I want to tie Collins' own goal in with a question that we've got on Twitter from @the_Super_Bee saying, is the armband weighing Collins down? We've seen Ireland fans complain about him as well. I mean, it should have been 3-0 very, very shortly after 2-0. I think it's harsh to say the armband's weighing him down. I think when you look at, we've spoken a lot about Norgard on the pod last season and how he leads in a different way. Collins is the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of you actually see him commanding on the pitch, shouting at teammates, shouting at the referee, which I know people won't like, but I think it shows a little bit of fight and a little bit of character. Collins has definitely got that. I don't know if it's the armband weighing him down. Someone like Jordan Henderson being next to him in the middle of the pitch as well is only going to help him. But I do think he's been more reminiscent of 23-24 Collins than 24-25 Collins, definitely. But you know, I don't think he's ever been as poor as he was against Wolves, for example, in that 23-24 season. But yeah, what's going on with Collins? Is that a fair comment or is that a fair question to ask?
I thought we had a Wolves moment coming when
Yeah.
when he headed in the long throw, and then about 2 minutes later he gave it away, and Sarr should have scored. I think he struggles with concentration at times and being distracted and recovering from errors. And you know, as a centre back, as the last line of defence, I think you can't let that affect you. You've got to just carry on. You've got to always remain laser focused and sharp. And I think he's always struggled with that. I just think last season he didn't have so many bad games to begin with. But when he's starting to have a bad game, you doubt his ability to recover. I agree in that Henderson, although he doesn't wear the armband, is probably just as much of a captain as Collins on the pitch. Mm-hmm. Henderson does not stop talking. So I'd be surprised if that's the reason for his drop-off, Collins, this season. You know, I would still stick by him. I still think on his day, he's by far our best centre-back.
Yeah.
He's still a young player, but, you know, we said this even 2 years ago. He's played in the Premier League for a number of years from a very young age, and he needs to cut out the errors and needs to be more consistent and needs to recover. Like, it's not even the fact he's making mistakes. He's making mistakes and they're not recovering from those mistakes for the rest of the game. And, you know, through his error and misconcentration, it went from 1-0 to 2-0, but it should have been 3-0. And that would have been on him. And we can't afford too many of those games, unfortunately. I just think some of his old inconsistencies creeping back in.
Yeah.
I think it's always been there, but perhaps it didn't show itself so much last season because he was in a good moment. But I don't think anything's massively changed. I just think it's always kind of been part of his makeup, you know, since before he joined.
It has to be said as well that he's going to have far easier tests than Jean-Philippe Mateta, who was dominant. There was a moment in the second half and it got clipped up and it kind of went semi-viral, but Mateta kind of tracks the ball back, runs it into his own corner flag, and Collins just fouls him. And it's the most frustrating fucking foul that you can concede in football, period. When the centre half is tracking the striker all the way back to his corner flag and you're just saying, don't foul him, don't foul him, don't foul him. And every single time he will buy that foul. But yeah, it was a kind of Ivan Toney-esque performance from Mateta, the way that he held the ball up. Collins is going to have easier games. I don't think it's anything to worry about, but obviously a little bit of inconsistency creeping in from 2 seasons prior. Let's talk about the subs, because Janel, Jensen and KLP on at 67, Nelson at 75, and Carvalho, who I think we should start with, at 86, because we've not spoken about Carvalho since the rumours. I don't know how much truth there is in them, but it was widely reported at the time that he wants out in January, and I can completely understand why, to be honest, when he's getting the minutes that he is at the moment. And I know Jensen's in a good bit of form coming on and scoring goals, and he played really well against Grimsby as well. But I mean, compared to the way Keith Andrews was talking about him before the season had started, it's not been backed up in terms of the minutes that he's getting. And I'd be fuming if I was getting the amount of minutes he's been getting recently. I don't. What's your take on the Fabio Carvalho situation?
I understand his frustration, but I mean, going back to the Grimsby game where he did play, I think others, particularly Reece Nelson, probably outshone him on that day, and he's got to take those opportunities when they come. I still do think Carvalho, I mean, we're talking about Damsgard losing the ball. I think Carvalho really loses the ball a lot. And I think that's probably what Keith Andrews doesn't really like. I think he's got to pick his moments to, attack, and also know the moments to keep the ball and maybe keep the attack going a little bit longer. So I think he could leave us vulnerable in that extent if he got more minutes. But in games where you're 2-0 down, just give him a go. He's more likely to score a goal than some of the players that have been brought on earlier. You could argue that Jensen obviously has scored a few recently. I think Reece Nelson is a good sub, but I can't really even see KLP scoring over Carvalho, to be honest. So you've got to give him more of an opportunity. He does score goals. That is the one thing he does. He does score goals. So I don't see why, there's not any risk bringing him on with 20 minutes to go when you're 2-0 down. So I get his frustration, but I still do think he needs to maybe do a little bit more when he does get those opportunities like he did against Grimsby in the Cup.
I would have loved to see, as soon as that second goal went in, even straight after the the Sarr hit the post, I would have loved to see him ring the changes there and then. I still think 67, you're giving 20 minutes to Janelt, Jensen and Keane Lewis-Potter to have an impact on the game. As soon as the second goal goes in, I made a video about it, but if there's one thing that we can level at Keith Andrews, it's the fact that bar the Chelsea game, when we have been losing, we have failed to turn those deficits into any points this season. And to kind of bring on Janelt and Jensen and Keane Lewis-Potter to a certain extent, three players that haven't shown any evidence of changing a game or kind of getting you back into a game recently, at least, to bring them on with 20 minutes to go and to give them that period of time to kind of change things up when the whole game we had created nothing. I think there's a lot to be. Well, he needs to improve that aspect of his in-game management, because Nelson comes on and he does more in 15 minutes than Schade did in 90. And Carvalho is given 5 minutes at the end of the game when he has a proven track record of scoring goals and turning deficits into points.
Yeah, I thought Nelson was the one bright spark in the second half, and I think actually I know you said the chance, but I think our best effort in the second half was when he had that shot which Henderson turned around the post. That was unlucky, and from the away end, it looked like it was going in. So he looked like the one bright spark, and I think he should be really putting pressure on the likes of Schade now, who we're going to go on to talk about. But it's not even just the subs that come on; it's the fact that you're bringing Jensen on. Great, I would agree with Jensen coming on, because he is someone else who can be a bit more creative, can find that spark, maybe instead of Yarmo or Hendo, because Hendo can be creative. Yarmo, I'm not sure he can play those balls over the top that Jensen can to try and make something happen, or as much as he runs around, and he's pretty solid. But why are you taking Damsgard off? Damsgard is our main creator. And then I didn't think I had the best game at left back. We take Coyote off and move Aya to right back. I would have just taken Aya off. Coyote, you've got his long throws. He's got the ability to get forward. He's got that pace. I think he can hurt them more than Aya can. And that's the frustration. We don't get more offensive when we make these subs. And it's not working. You need to go more offensive. You need to get more attacking players on the pitch. Thomas Frank did used to do that. He used to just throw a load of attackers on, maybe too late, but he used to do it. And we're not really seeing that from Keith Andrews, and that's probably my biggest criticism of him throughout the season so far, because that's something he's not really learned from. we're not really impacting the game from the bench, particularly when we're losing. When we're winning, I think he's okay at managing the subs. But when we're losing, he's not able to make the subs that get us back into the game. He doesn't, I don't know why he takes certain players off all the time. And then Schade, and we can segue into Schade, when he seems to be one that's kind of immune to being subbed this season. It's normally Dango that gets subbed over him. And he's really frustrating me. He's a player that when we're playing well, he can be really good. He can do some great things. But he never seems to be a player that I can rely upon when we're not playing well. We need someone to dig us out. And those are the games that are the most important, where you need someone to step up, and he's not doing it.
Yeah, I think I would be very, very tempted to start Nelson over Kevin Schade against Newcastle at the weekend, because I think, I made a video about it, and, I kind of said it's hard because, Brentford signings, Keane Lewis Potter, Mikael Damsgard, historically, they take a little bit of time to kind of really show their worth. But what are we, third season of Kevin Schade now, I want to say, because he joined in January, didn't he? And he looked really good when he came on, kind of in his opening 4 or 5 games. But I'm struggling to remember like a consistent run of good performances. Having said that, he scored 13 goals last season, and credit to him, because, living in the shadow of Mbeumo and Whistle last season must have been tough, but he still managed to score 13 goals last season. But it's just the performance angle of it. When the game on Saturday, we may as well have been playing with 10 men, because every time he gets the ball, it's a bad touch. Every time it's just, I hate digging our own players out like this, because I feel like I do it a lot with Schade, but he is the most frustrating player to watch at times, because, when he's on it, it's brilliant. He can really run at his fullback. He can make things happen. He can get past his man. Sometimes the final touch is lacking in quality, but at least he's a handful. But when he's not on it, oh my God, like it's just difficult. It's so difficult, especially when, he's immune to being subbed. But yeah, would you chuck Nelson on from the start, or would you at least give him a bit longer than 20 minutes or 15 minutes to affect the game on Sunday if he does start on the bench?
I think Nelson's at really bright against Grimsby, and again off the bench against Palace. So I would want to start him over Schade. But I think, if anything, I think Andrew
Probably
should
start with Tara.
I think he drop Dango,
Yeah.
for Nelson if he was to bring him in. I think, Schade. There was one occasion when Mateta, like you said, Mateta in the corner flag winning a foul. There was one occasion where Schade was in the corner flag with the ball, keeping it there, trying to continue the attack. He didn't win a corner, didn't win a throw in. I think he gave away a foul, and that just sums his game up. I think he would be a really effective substitute as well, with his pace and power late on when defenses are tiring. I think he'd actually be quite good off the bench.
Yeah.
It is really frustrating, and I think he could do with a couple of games on the bench, because it's no use only performing when the rest of the team's performing.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Oh, go on. Sorry, carry on.
I was going to say we just need attackers who can dig us out of a game when we're not playing well, who can do something. I just don't have faith that he'll be able to do that.
I mean, Dango's shown more since he signed, in terms of, being able to really affect games and really make a difference than Schade has shown in a lot of games for Brentford. Let us know in the comment. I was going to say, let us know in the comment section what you think about this conversation, because I don't know if we're being too harsh on Schade. Because, I feel like the goal return alone last season shows you that he's a good enough player to kind of play in the front three for a Premier League side. But it's the thing that gets me and the thing that makes me criticize him is just the performance angle of it all. It's too inconsistent for me. And yeah, let us know in the comment section, because I feel like we talk about Schade a lot. And he's quite a divisive player for us. Anything else from the game that we want to talk about, really, before we get into some questions from listeners?
Not really. I just think we should be better at keeping the ball in midfield. I think we've never been that great at progressing the ball through the midfield, unless we've been under Thomas Frank playing against like the promoted teams. I think with the personnel we've got in there, Henderson is a really good footballer who should be able to keep the ball really well. Damsgard, same. Yarmo is a great young prospect. We've got good players in that area of the pitch, so I do think we should be able to progress and keep the ball better. Too often when we've got the ball, we just end up going back to centre backs and going across, and there's no real urgency.
Yeah.
So I think that's something we need to work on. But I think to an extent, that's always been a bit of a problem since we got promoted.
I think that the Palace's man-to-man press kind of eliminated any chance for us to kind of get out when our centre halves had the ball, and I think Collins and Vandenberg had the first and third most touches for us. It was a little bit reminiscent of Forest. All the possession that we had was in our defensive third, and we just couldn't get out. But yeah, it was tricky. Let's move on to some questions. You mentioned Thomas Frank there. And I do kind of maybe want to talk about him as well, because there's been a lot of noise about Spurs. But we'll do some questions, then we'll talk about Grimsby, and then we might do a little section on Thomas Frank at the end, depending on the time. But we've got Bag Donuts on Twitter asking, maybe a bit early for this, but with AFCON coming up, what changes do we make without Dango? And I'll tie this into a question from Richard as well on Twitter, saying the squad is looking pretty strong at the moment and injuries relatively limited. Do we need any strengthening in the January transfer window? Is Dango the Thiago backup at striker? Considering Dango is off to AFCON, I would say that we definitely need another body up top.
I would say we would anyway, because I think it would leave us short in the wide areas if Dango had to be used as a striker. So I agree with that. Do I think we will? Not necessarily. We don't typically do a lot in January, unless obviously prices are often inflated that time of year. So unless there's an option out there available for us, then I can't see anything particularly happening in that area. But I think we would have all said in the summer we need another striker. If Thiago was to get injured, we definitely need another striker. I think even at the end of games, we see Thiago flagging a little bit at times. Another striker would be really helpful. So I think that's still needed. I think when Dango goes to AFCON, I think Reece Nelson will probably just slot in. And the way he's looked, I wouldn't mind that. I don't think for a short period of time. So I think he's probably the one primed. I think he has looked really bright the last couple of games.
I would still say that even with the cover of Nelson, we should be signing another striker in January. I don't think we will, but I think if we were lower down the table and the performances were worse, then I think we would. And I think, because of the kind of war chest that we've got from the summer, we didn't really put it to a lot of use. Obviously, Dango is the record signing, but I would still say that if Brentford were, if there was as much negativity around us as there was post, I don't know, when was it really bad? Post Sunderland, maybe. Fulham as well. Yeah, post Fulham. Yeah, if there was as much negativity around us as there was post Fulham, and we were a little bit lower down the table, I would think that the club might look into dipping into the January market. I still think they should, though, to be honest, because one injury to Thiago and Dan goes off to AFCON, and then we're fucked in terms of
not as bad as last season, losing Wissa and Brian. I think we've. I mean, Wissa's turned out to be an absolutely terrible signing for Newcastle. He's going to be off to AFCON in a couple of months. We've absolutely rinsed him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just on Wissa, he could potentially make his debut against Brentford. Or is this? I don't know the latest reporting on it, but I don't think
he's training.
He's not even training, so he won't make his debut against Brentford. No. So he's completely bottled the rat. But but yeah, I mean, I've seen so many tweets about Wissa, considering like how much they paid for him, his age, the fact that he's off to AFCON, the fact that he's injury prone. And I couldn't be happier, Dan, to be honest.
He's got so many songs as well. I've never known a player to have so many.
Honestly, the loudest song at the moment, I think, is Wissa is a senior. that gets picked up by everyone in the away ends, and I absolutely love it. One more question. I think Dan's asking, why is there another international break? I agree, Dan. I would like more of club football. Gary was asking about the Schade problem. I think we've spoken about that too. Can we chat about Thomas Frank a little bit? Because before we get into Grimsby, I've not got this in the running order, so I'm slightly riffing here. But, I mean, did you watch the Chelsea game on Saturday?
I know they were terrible, but I know what you're going to say, and I think I agree with you. I think they're being way too harsh on him. They're doing so much better than they were last season. They came 17th. Like, what do they expect?
I keep hearing Spurs fans saying this isn't Brentford anymore, and it is so frustrating because and I know there's obviously nuance with it because Tottenham are a big club. And, historically, they've been quite good. But for the last 5 years, they have been shit. Literally, they have been pants for the last 5 years, whether it was Nuno, Jose, Conte, Ange in the last season. the fact, and I know that the football's been a little bit dire, but yeah, there's so much stuff that I could talk about. They get so angry about the style of play. Before the Chelsea game, they scored the most most goals from open play in the league. They're much better at set pieces. I just don't understand how, there's a lot of talk around this isn't Brentford anymore. Last year, Brentford had a front three of Brian Mbeumo, Kevin Schade, and Johan Wissa. Two of them scored 20 goals apiece, and Schade scored 13. You're telling me that is a better front line than Spurs currently have in the players that they want to perform well in, like Wilson Odebear, Richarlison, Kolo Muani. Obviously, Kolo Muani is a bit different. Xavi Simons, who they brought in, who actually played really well in the Champions League last night. But, I think we all said that we wanted Thomas Frank to do well. It's the way that fan base, I don't know what it is. I understand that they're a big club, but they've won 2 trophies in 25 years. And the way that they talk about managers and the way that the lack of patience with a man like Thomas Frank, who has them 6th in the table, unbeaten in the Champions League. They look defensively more solid than they did under Ange. And they came 17th. They came 17th last season and lost 22 games. I don't get the lack of patience in that fan base, really. But I think with the games that he's got coming up, what is it? Because they've got United at the weekend, then they got Arsenal, then they got PSG, then they got Newcastle away. I'm actually, if they lose all of those games and the performances are as dire as it was against Chelsea on Saturday, I think he might be a goner, Dan.
I hope the owners don't see it the same way though, because objectively they're doing quite well. Like, where did they expect to be? And he's the sort of manager that will add layers every year. And he's obviously gone in and thought, we need to sort us out defensively. We need to get us better at clean sheets. We need at set pieces, and we need to do the basics better. And he's done that to an extent. I think our front three was better than Tottenham's current front three. So they're not going to naturally create as many chances, perhaps, as even we did last season. But I think over time, you'll see a progression of play for Spurs. They'll get much better on the ball. They'll get much better going forward. But I'm not sure we'll ever see that time, because he's not going to get the patience he got at Brentford at Spurs. And he's actually had quite a good start. Imagine he didn't actually have a good start. They'd be all over it.
That's the most baffling thing about it. And I get the home form, but the home form was terrible before Thomas Frank got there, and the football was terrible before Thomas Frank got there as well. And I don't know. I really hope he gets another kind of window, at least another 2 windows, just because. I'm going to have to apologise to all of the Spurs podcasts that I went on at the start of the season, waxing lyrical about Thomas Frank. But I just think it needs time. Let us know in the comments what you thought of, or what you think of the discourse around Thomas Frank and that phrase, "This isn't Brentford anymore." God, that fucking pisses me off.
I've got my Spurs tickets next month. That would be very interesting if we won.
Oh my God, that would hit like something. Jesus Christ, if we go to their place and beat them, that would be quite superb. But yeah, let us know in the comments. Should we talk a little bit about Grimsby? We won't spend too long on it because it was a while ago. We've spoken about Nelson. KLP looked good. Jensen dominated. I think the main thing from Grimsby was just how bloody amazing Ramel Donovan looked when he came on. And we chatted about him on the episode that had just gone. A lot of sort of the fact that he's not featured on a bench, and a lot of people kind of call in for Andrews' head because of it. But he did, I said, post Grimsby, I said, I want to see him on a Premier League bench soon, because the way that he got about the pitch, he was just like a little live wire. He was incredible. I really, really enjoyed that, just to see someone come on, show absolutely no fear, so diminutive, the low center of gravity. It was really working for him. Grimsby.
Donovan was good, but I still think against a Premier League defence, he's likely to find it much more difficult. I think he needs to, bulk up a little bit. I think alone in League One or League Two, or maybe even Championship, if he's at that level, would really suit him. Regular football every week against men's teams, be consistent, get that end product, because, he's really good at dribbling, but can he always make the right decision in the final third? I don't know. We haven't seen enough of him, but I think it's a lot to ask for him to do that in the Premier League, particularly if he does play. He's not going to get regular minutes.
No.
We all know Schade is undroppable. So I think he needs to get more experience, because he is really exciting. If he has a year loan and is good
Rips it up. Yeah.
at like League One or Championship level, then he could be a player that could immediately then start impacting games in the Premier League. I just don't see much point in someone being on the bench and getting the odd 5 minutes here and there in the Premier League when you can go play regularly at his age and really improve. But yeah, he did look bright, and I was pleased to see him. And I like Keith Andrews' approach in general to cup games. I mean, bringing Nathan Collins on when you're 4-0 up, and I think he brought a couple of others on as well. It's like, this is completely unnecessary. But I like the approach in terms of taking it seriously, making sure you win the game, having a really strong bench. And I think the real test will be against City in the next round, where I think we need to go full strength. I think we need to treat it like a league game. They will likely rest someone like Haaland. It won't be as strong as a team that as we will face in the Premier League. And I think if you take that into account, if we go full strength with the first 11, that becomes a game that you think we actually have a good chance in, a decent chance in.
Yeah.
And, you know, if Keith Andrews really wants to win everyone over, getting us into a Carabao Cup semi-final or final is the way to do it. You know, do something we've never seen before, especially if we're in and around mid-table in the Premier League. Please take it seriously, because, you know, we're at that stage now where we were last season, where we went to Newcastle and took out the core of the team. I think they need to start now. I get you want to rotate. I get you want to keep everyone happy, but surely you want to win a trophy. Crystal Palace are the example. You know, they can do it. If they can do it, we can do it. And, you know, especially in the League Cup, which I think people generally take less seriously than the FA Cup anyway. So good so far. We've done enough. Those are the sorts of lineups that will win more often than not against the sort of teams like Grimsby. And obviously they've done well against Bournemouth and Villa as well. So I like the fact that he's being positive. I like the fact he's taking it more seriously, using a change side, but still an experienced side. Not too many young players in there. But now we need to see a bit more to beat City, I think. I'm not sure that will work against City. I think we've got to go full strength.
Well, I mean, we've got the league game as an example of how not to play, especially in that first half. I mean, we didn't offer loads in the second either. But this is going to be a tough ask. That I know you're saying, you know, we've got a chance. They might rest players. I think of the two ties that no one wanted was Newcastle away and City away. And I don't know. I think
if you take Haaland out, you know, that's a big threat that has been eliminated.
I think he will,
I don't think he'll play in the League Cup.
You don't think so?
I don't think Haaland will play. And why not? If we can, you know, we have beaten City in the past, and I'd be very surprised if they play an absolutely full strength team. You know, Donnarumma won't be in goal, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reason we can't do it. It's going to be easier than it would be going there in the league.
Yeah.
So take it seriously. Go with your full team. Obviously, you only get that perhaps extra chance, extra advantage if we go really strong and don't rest anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's our only chance of going through. But I think if we do that, there's a chance. And then if we do get past City, hopefully we'll have the belief that we can actually go all the way. Because if you're beating City away, there's not many harder places to go.
Yeah, no, that's a nice way to look at it, Dan. Should we chat a little bit about Newcastle?
I'm normally the pessimist.
I know you're normally the pessimist. I was just going to say that. Newcastle at home on Sunday. They're not really looking like the team they were last year. Got beaten by West Ham at their ground last time out, which is quite surprising. I think they play in Europe in between. I think they're playing tonight actually, or tomorrow, one of the two. How are you feeling ahead of it on Sunday?
I think our home record's very good. We've had a number of tough games on paper at home this season. We've got a pretty good home record. So I think you can always back us, but it's not going to be easy. I think we always talk about Newcastle's midfield three when we play them. That midfield battle is going to be key. And, you know, again, on paper, I think, you know, that's potentially one of the best midfield three in the league. Their new striker, Voldemar, I think he is very good. He's settled in really well. He's tall, but he's very technically good as well. So Collins needs to be on it. I think it'll be another tough game for him. But there's no reason we can't be positive and try and play football against them. You know, Newcastle at home last season was one of our best performances. I think I was quite poor against Palace, and I still kind of think
Hickey.
It would look a bit more natural just to have a left footer, even if it's Rico Henry.
Yeah.
Just have a left footer left back. Yeah, I think again from Henry's perspective, the fact that he's getting in a left back ahead of him, you know, what does that say to him? So I'd probably go back to Hickey if he's available, but if not, maybe Rico Henry. And I would bring Nelson in for Schade, but I can't see that happening definitely. But otherwise, I don't think we need to change loads.
I think the message is the same as what it's been when we've gone into these games against the top six. If it's not going our way, you've got to make change. Even in every game, because I feel like it's been every game. If it's not going our way, if we're 1-0, we're 2-0 down, we're not creating chances, change it. Bring some attackers on. Go a little bit different. Get someone on that can affect the game. And you know, it's the same goes for Sunday. The same goes for Sunday for me, because that's, I think, the only thing, and we mentioned it before, but the only thing you can really criticize Andrews for is that in-game management and getting points from losing positions. So yeah, I think that would be a good place to round off the podcast. We're going to be back for a full-time show after the Newcastle game. And we also have something very, very, very special coming over the international break. So keep your eyes peeled across our social media for clues as to what that might be. Dan, it's been a pleasure. Remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts ahead of the Newcastle game. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials, at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at the Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Dan, I shall see you on Sunday.
Up the bees.